a small, sun-drenched village nestled between rolling green hills, lived a young girl named Adana. Adana was an orphan, her heart as kind as the morning sun, but her life was anything but bright. The other girls in the village, especially the daughters of the wealthy merchant, Chidinma and Ebel, treated her with scorn. They would parade in their fine silks and glittering beads, their laughter echoing like cruel bells whenever Adana passed by in her simple, patched-up dress. "Look, the little mouse scurries," Chidinma would sneer, flicking her wrist, adorned with gold bracelets. "Does she think her rags will turn into riches?" Ebel would add, her voice dripping with mockery. Adana would simply lower her gaze, her spirit heavy, and continue on her way to fetch water from the river or gather firewood from the forest. She never retorted, for her grandmother had taught her that kindness was a shield, an anger, a self-inflicted wound. Adana's only solace was the forest. The ancient trees felt like wise old friends, their leaves whispering secrets of resilience. The birds sang songs of hope, and the river flowed with a steady strength she wished she possessed. It was in this magical place that she felt seen, not for the poverty that clothed her, but for the gentle soul that she was. One day, news swept through the village like a harmattan wind. The handsome Prince Adebayo, son of the great king, was searching for a bride. He was not looking for wealth or status, the royal announcer declared, but for a heart of pure gold. He would be hosting a grand festival, and every maiden in the kingdom was invited to present him with a gift that represented her truest self. The village buzzed with excitement. Chidinma and Abel were in a frenzy. "I will present him with the rarest blue diamond from our father's collection," Chidinma announced. "It will show him the depth and value of my love." Abel scoffed. "A mere stone. I shall weave a tapestry of pure gold thread, depicting his greatest victories. That will show him my devotion and skill." They spent weeks preparing, their house filled with the sounds of goldsmiths and weavers, their laughter even more arrogant than before. They saw Adana by the market and taunted her. "What will you offer the prince, little orphan? A handful of dirt, a bundle of sticks." Adana's heart sank. What could she possibly offer a prince? She had no jewels, no gold, no silks. She felt a familiar despair creep in. That evening, she fled to the forest, her tears watering the roots of a giant baobab tree. As she wept, she didn't notice a pair of bright, wise eyes watching her from the branches above. It was an old woman, her face a map of wrinkles, her smile gentle. "Tears are for watering seeds of hope, little one, not for drowning them," the old woman said, her voice like the rustling of leaves. Adana, startled, looked up. The old woman climbed down with surprising agility. "I have heard your silent prayers, Adana. You have a gift far greater than any jewel or tapestry." "I have nothing," Adana whispered, her voice hoarse. "You have kindness," the old woman replied, "and you have the magic of this forest in your heart." She then handed Adana a single, small, brown seed. "This is a seed from the sun-kissed mango tree, a tree that fruits only once every 100 years. Its fruit is said to hold the sweetness of 1,000 good deeds. Plant this seed. Nurture it with the water of your kindness and the warmth of your spirit. What it becomes will be your gift." Adana was skeptical, but the old woman's eyes held a deep, ancient wisdom she couldn't ignore. She took the seed, thanked the woman, and returned to her small hut. She planted the seed in a clay pot, watered it, and sang to it the lullabies her grandmother used to sing. She spoke to it, telling it stories of the forest of our dreams and her hopes. While Chidinma and Ebel were busy with their lavish gifts, Adana was pouring her soul into this tiny seed. To her astonishment, the seed sprouted overnight. A small, vibrant green shoot pushed its way through the soil. Each day, it grew at an impossible rate. The leaves were the color of emeralds, and soon, a single, beautiful flower bloomed its petals, shimmering with all the colors of the dawn. The entire village watched in awe as this magical plant grew on her windowsill. Chidinma and Ebel dismissed it as strange witchcraft, too consumed by their own preparations to truly understand. The day of the festival arrived. The palace grounds were a kaleidoscope of color and sound. Maidens from all corners of the kingdom lined up, each holding a magnificent gift. Chidinma presented her flawless blue diamond, which glittered under the sun. The prince nodded politely. Ebel unveiled her stunning golden tapestry, a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The prince offered a gracious smile. One by one, the maidens presented their treasures, but a shadow of disappointment lingered in the prince's eyes. Then, it was Adana's turn. She walked forward, her steps hesitant. She wore her usual simple dress, but it was clean and mended with care. In her hands, she held the small clay pot. On the plant, where the magnificent flower had been, now hung a single, perfect mango. It glowed with a soft, golden light, radiating a warmth that could be felt by everyone nearby. Its scent was intoxicatingly sweet, a mix of sunshine, honey, and fresh rain. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. "A mango?" Chidinma shrieked, doubling over with laughter. "She brings the prince a single mango." Ebel joined in, pointing a mocking finger. "The orphan has truly lost her mind." Adana's cheeks flushed with shame, and her eyes welled up. She almost turned to run. But then, she looked at the prince. His eyes were not filled with mockery. They were wide with wonder. He stood up from his throne and walked down the steps towards her, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. "Silence!" the prince commanded, his voice ringing with authority. The laughter died instantly. He stood before Adana, his gaze fixed on the glowing fruit. "Tell me about this gift," A sighed softly, his voice kind. Finding her courage, Adana spoke. She told him about the old woman in the forest, about the seed, and about how she nurtured it with songs and stories. She didn't speak of her poverty or the cruelty she faced. She only spoke of the kindness she was taught and the hope she poured into the plant. "It is all I have to give, Your Highness," she finished, her voice trembling. "It is a gift grown from the heart." The prince reached out and gently touched a leaf on the plant. A warm, peaceful energy seemed to flow from it. He then looked directly into Adana's eyes, and for the first time, she felt truly seen. He saw the kindness, the resilience, and the pure, unblemished spirit that the others had been too blind to notice. "You have brought me the greatest treasure of all," Prince Adebayo declared, his voice resonating across the silent courtyard. "Other maidens have brought me things that can be bought with gold or crafted by hand. But you have brought me a gift that can only be grown with love. You have shown me your true self, a heart of pure gold." He took the pot from her hands, and then, to the utter shock of everyone, he took her hand in his. He turned to face the stunned crowd. Chidinma and Ebel's faces frozen in disbelief. "I have found my queen," the prince announced. "I have found the heart I have been searching for." A thunderous cheer erupted from the people. Adana, the poor orphan girl, was chosen by the prince, not for riches or beauty, but for the richness of her character. She learned that day that true worth is not measured by what you have, but by the goodness you cultivate within your own soul. And as she stood by the prince's side, a single, knowing look from the crowd caught her eye. It was the old woman from the forest, who gave her a slow, proud wink before disappearing back into the throng. Adana's new life had just begun, a life where her kindness was finally her crown. In a vibrant village, nestled at the foot of the great Kilimanjaro, lived a young girl named Amara. Her spirit was as bright as the morning sun, but her life was shrouded in sorrow. Orphaned at a young age, she lived with her cruel stepmother and two stepsisters, Zola and Kenna, who were known throughout the village for their vanity and arrogance. Their family was wealthy, but Amara was treated no better than a servant. She wore rags, ate scraps, and her bed was a thin mat on the kitchen floor. Zola and Kenna spent their days preening themselves, adorning their hair with gold beads and wrapping their waists in the finest kente cloth. They would often mock Amara. "Look at her, covered in soot." Zola would sneer. "Even the goats look cleaner than you, Amara," Kenna would add. And they would both erupt in cruel laughter. Amara never responded. Instead, she would find solace in the small garden behind their compound, where she grew sweet yams and colorful flowers. talking to the birds and butterflies as if they were her only friends. One day, a royal messenger arrived in the village square, his voice booming like a drum. Hear the Prince Aid, the heir to our great kingdom, is seeking a wife. A grand festival will be held at the royal palace in 3 days' time. All eligible maidens in the land are invited to attend. The news sent a jolt of excitement through the village. Every maiden dreamed of catching the prince's eye. Zola and Kenna were beside themselves with glee. The prince will surely choose one of us, Zola declared, practicing her most charming smile in a polished gourd. Mother, we need new silks. The finest from the market. Kenna demanded. Their mother, eager to see one of her daughters become queen, spared no expense. Amara's heart fluttered with a secret hope. She, too, dreamed of going to the festival, not to win the prince, but just to experience a night of music, dancing, and joy, away from her dreary life. Timidly, she approached her stepmother. Mother, she began, her voice barely a whisper. May I also attend the festival? Her stepmother and stepsister stared at her as if she had grown a second head, then burst into laughter. You? Her stepmother scoffed. In what? Your rags? You would bring shame upon our family. Your place is here, scrubbing the floors and tending the fire. Zola and Kenna chimed in. The prince would faint at the sight of you. Stay where you belong. Little Ash girl. Defeated, Amara retreated to her garden, tears streaming down her dusty cheeks. She felt a profound sadness, a loneliness that seemed to seep into her very bones. As she wept, a gentle voice startled her. My child, why do you cry? Amara looked up to see an old woman with kind eyes, her face etched with the wisdom of many years. She was the village elder, a woman said to possess ancient magic. Amara poured out her heart, telling the old woman about her cruel family and her shattered dream. The elder listened patiently, then smiled. Tears will not get you to the festival, little one, but courage and a kind heart might. She handed Amara a single, small, cowrie shell. Plant this in your garden, she instructed. Water it with the water from the ancient baobab tree, and believe in the magic of your own spirit. Though confused, Amara did as she was told. She planted the shell, fetched water from the distant baobab, and whispered her hopes into the soil. The next morning, where the shell had been planted, stood a magnificent gown. It was woven from moonbeams and starlight, shimmering with all the colors of the dawn. Beside it lay sandals made of pure gold and a necklace of dewdrops that sparkled like diamonds. On the night of the festival, as her stepfamily left in their finery, Amara bathed in the nearby stream, dressed in the magical garments, and made her way to the palace. When she entered the grand hall, a hush fell over the crowd. No one recognized the stunning maiden. Her beauty was so radiant, it outshone all the jewels and silks in the room. Prince Aid, who had been politely greeting guests with a bored expression, stopped in his tracks, his eyes locked with Amara's. And he was captivated. He walked directly to her, bypassing all the other maidens, including a fuming Zola and Kenna. I have never seen such grace, he said, his voice filled with awe. May I have this dance? Amara, shy, but filled with a newfound confidence, nodded. They danced the night away, and it felt as if they were the only two people in the world. They talked and laughed, and the prince was charmed, not just by her beauty, but by her wit, her kindness, and the gentle strength in her eyes. As the first light of dawn approached, Amara knew she had to leave before her stepfamily returned. I must go, she whispered, pulling away. In her haste, one of her golden sandals slipped off her foot. The prince picked it up, but she was already gone, disappearing into the night like a dream. The next day, the prince was distraught. He was determined to find the mysterious maiden who had stolen his heart. He issued a royal decree. He would marry the girl whose foot fit the golden sandal. He and his royal guards traveled from village to village, house to house. When they arrived at Amara's compound, Zola and Kenna nearly trampled each other to be the first to try on the sandal. Zola squeezed and pushed, but her foot was too wide. Kenna grimaced and grunted, but her foot was too long. Their mother even suggested cutting off a toe, but the guards looked on, unimpressed. "Are there any other maidens in this house?" the prince asked, his hope dwindling. "No, your highness." The stepmother lied quickly. "Only our servant girl, but she's nothing but Hustin." One of the guards who had been searching the compound spotted Amara in the garden. "What about her, eh?" Kaid out. The stepmother tried to protest, but Prince Aid insisted. Amara was brought forward, still in her simple clothes. She shyly sat down and slipped her foot into the golden sandal. It was a perfect fit. Zola, Kenna, and their mother gasped in disbelief and horror. At that moment, the old woman, the village elder, appeared. She smiled and placed her hand on Amara's shoulder. In a flash of light, Amara's rags transformed back into the magnificent gown from the festival. Everyone finally understood. Prince Aid's face broke into a joyous smile. He knelt before Amara, taking her hand. "I have found you," he sighed softly. "Will you be my wife and fill the palace with your light and kindness?" With tears of joy in her eyes, Amara said yes. Her stepmother and stepsisters, humbled and shamed, could only watch as the prince lifted Amara onto his horse, as they rode towards the palace to begin their new life. Amara looked back at the village, not with sadness, but with the quiet strength of someone who had turned her ashes into a crown. Her story became a legend, a reminder to all that true worth lies not in wealth or beauty, but in a kind and resilient heart. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing tales. See you next time. In a small village nestled among rolling hills lived a young girl named Amara. An orphan, she was raised by a distant aunt who treated her more like a servant than a niece. Amara's days were long and filled with hard work. From sunrise to sunset, her clothes were patched, her hands were calloused, and her only friends were the birds she sang to in the fields. In the same village lived 3 sisters, the daughters of the wealthiest merchant. They were known for their beautiful clothes, their glittering jewelry, and their cruel laughter. Whenever they saw Amara, they would point and mock her. "Look at the field mouse," one would sneer. "Her dress is made of rags." Another would cackle. "She probably sleeps in the dirt with the goats," the third would add, and they would all laugh, their voices like a harsh wind. Amara never said a word back. She would simply lower her head, her heart aching with sadness, and hurry away. At night, she would look up at the moon and stars, tears silently tracing paths on her dusty cheeks, and she would whisper a prayer for kindness, for a day when she wouldn't feel so alone. One day, a royal messenger arrived in the village with a grand announcement. The prince, a kind and wise young man, was seeking a bride. He was not interested in wealth or status, but in a woman with a pure heart and a kind spirit. To find her, he would host a great festival at the royal palace. Every maiden in the kingdom was invited to attend and present the prince with a gift that truly represented who she was. The news sent a wave of excitement through the village. The 3 rich sisters were ecstatic. They spent a fortune on new silk dresses, gold jewelry, and rare perfumes. For their gifts, they commissioned the finest craftsmen. One had a necklace of dazzling diamonds, another a crown of woven gold, and the third a statuette carved from pure ivory. "The prince will surely choose one of us," they boasted to anyone who would listen. Amara heard the news while scrubbing the floors. Her heart fluttered with a tiny spark of hope. She, too, dreamed of going to the festival, but her aunt quickly crushed that dream. "You? Go to the palace?" she scoffed. "In those rags, what could you possibly offer the prince?" A handful of dirt. The 3 sisters overheard and burst into their usual cruel laughter. Heartbroken, Amara ran to her favorite spot by the river, a quiet place shaded by an old baobab tree. She sat and cried, her tears mingling with the flowing water. As she wept, she noticed a tiny, injured bird at her feet, its wing twisted at an odd angle. Forgetting her own sorrow, Amara gently scooped up the little creature. She found a soft leaf to wrap its wing and fed it a few wild berries she had saved. She sang a soft, soothing melody, the same one she sang to herself when she was sad. 4 days, she cared for the bird, sharing her meager meals and protecting it from harm. Slowly, the bird healed. On the morning of the festival, as Amara was about to release it, the bird suddenly transformed before her very eyes into a beautiful woman with a shimmering gown and a kind, radiant smile. "I am a spirit of the forest," she said. "I have seen your pure heart and your unending kindness, Amara." The spirit waved her hand, and Amara's rags turned into a stunning dress woven from moonlight and river reeds, adorned with dewdrops that sparkled like diamonds. On her feet were sandals made of soft moss. "For your gift," the spirit said, placing a single, perfect wildflower in Amara's hand. "This flower only blooms where true kindness is found. It is a reflection of your own beautiful soul." With a grateful smile, the spirit vanished, leaving Amara in stunned silence. Hesitantly, Amara made her way to the palace. The guards, seeing her simple elegance and quiet grace, let her pass without question. She entered the grand hall, which was filled with maidens in lavish gowns, all clamoring for the prince's attention. The rich sisters were there, preening and showing off their extravagant gifts. When they saw Amara, their jaws dropped. They sneered. "What is she doing here? And what is that weed she's holding?" One by one, the maidens presented their gifts to the prince. He accepted the diamonds, the gold, and the ivory with polite courtesy, but his eyes remained thoughtful, searching. Finally, it was Amara's turn. She walked forward, her heart pounding. The crowd whispered, laughing at her simple offering. The three sisters smirked, certain of her humiliation. Amara knelt before the prince and presented the single wildflower. "Your Highness," she said, her voice soft but clear, "I have no gold or jewels. This is all I have to offer. It is a simple flower, but it grew from an act of kindness." The prince took the flower. As his fingers touched it, the blossom began to glow with a soft, warm light that filled the entire hall. Silencing the crowd, a gentle, sweet fragrance enveloped them all. The prince looked up from the glowing flower and directly into Amara's eyes. He saw no greed or ambition, only honesty, humility, and a deep, profound kindness that shone brighter than any diamond. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. He stood up and took Amara's hand, helping her to her feet. "I have seen countless riches today," he announced to the astonished court, "but you are the first person to offer me a true treasure." He turned to Amara, his voice filled with admiration. "Your gift is the greatest of them all, for it comes from a pure and beautiful heart. Will you be my bride?" Tears of joy streamed down Amara's face as she nodded. The hall erupted in cheers. The three rich sisters could only stare in disbelief, their expensive gifts seeming dull and meaningless in the light of Amara's simple flower. They had learned a harsh lesson that day, that the value of a person is not measured by their wealth or their clothes, but by the richness of their heart and the kindness they show to others. Amara and the prince were married, and she became a beloved princess, known throughout the kingdom for her compassion and grace. She never forgot where she came from, always treating every person, from the highest noble to the humblest servant, with the same kindness that had won her a prince's heart. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from around the world. See you next time.